Joining me live to discuss the latest political unrest dividing US officials is Richard Johnson. He is a senior lecturer in US politics at the Queen Mary University of London. Good to have you with us.
Good morning.
So in the wake of the recent fatal shooting of Renee Good in Minneapolis by an ICE agent, protests are growing and intensifying across the country, creating divisions within the Democratic Party about how to respond. So how politically difficult is this issue for the party, and what do most voters want to see happen as they prepare to vote in the midterms later this year?
Look, there's clearly a lot of anger on the ground, particularly from people who would be natural Democratic voters, people on the left of center of American politics. And in some respects, their anger is broadly shared, but some of the demands that are being made at the protests, both in terms of abolishing ICE or ending deportations, is not as widely shared. Fewer than 1 in 5 Americans believe that no illegal immigrants in the United States should be deported. So, in other words, large majorities of Americans believe that some people who are in the United States illegally, not necessarily all people, but some people who are in the United States illegally should be deported. And this puts Democratic elected officials in a bit of a bind because they do want to show their solidarity with victims in their own communities, with their activists. But at the same time, they're mindful that this may not be some of these demands may not be very helpful, for example, in winning the currently Republican-held House seats that they need to pick up if they want to win a majority in the House, and ditto, and even a higher mountain decline in winning those key swing states to win the Senate in November.
All right, so let's turn now to another political issue, the pushback President Trump has been receiving from 5 Republicans in the Senate, voting with Democrats to advance a resolution to force the president to cease hostile operations against Venezuela if Congress doesn't give explicit authorization in the coming 90 days. So how likely is it that this will pass in the House, and where do you see it going from there?
Look, the Constitution is clear that Congress has the authority to declare war, but the president is commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and so this creates what we call a first mover advantage for the US president, where the president can command troops into conflict zones, and they follow the chain of command, quite rightly. But this then means, well, what does Congress do if they've not actually authorized the president to give this command? And back in 1973, Congress passed the War Powers Act over the veto of President Nixon to say that if you do this without our prior consent, then you have to withdraw the troops in 90 days unless we give you further consent to keep those forces in harm's way. And what Congress, or what the Senate has done so far as a result of these 5 Republican defectors, is to state explicitly that they view the United States' presence in Venezuela as falling under the terms of the War Powers Act, and therefore saying that President Trump must cease hostilities against Venezuela within 90 days unless the president gets explicit authorization under the War Powers Act. This may pass the House. You may see a sufficient number of Republicans defect to the Democrats, and you get a majority in the House. But unlike 1973, this is not a veto-proof majority. So this is going to eventually end up on the president's desk. The president will veto it, and it is in effect, it's putting political pressure on the president, but it's unlikely to pass. And the president is unlikely to face some kind of legal sanction in the courts, because back in 2000, in a case called Campbell versus Clinton, the Supreme Court said the War Powers Act is a political question, it's a non-justiciable question. So this ultimately is about putting political pressure on the president, but in terms of its legal weight, it's going to be limited.
Richard Johnson, many thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.